So, having decided I wanted to change the gearbox on Austin, I had to look at the alternatives. The alternatives were another Magic Wand box, which is out of the question because everybody hated the gear change, a remote box with the alloy extension, or a rod change box. I also figured that I should probably look at 5-speed as well, because I wanted the low down gearing to be as it was or better, ideally a bit closer together, but I also wanted the touring ability that the high final drive on the old gearbox gave me. So lots of research. Ideally I really would have liked a remote box because I like the one that's in Bumblebee, but I couldn't find one. The only ones I could find were original old Jackknight boxes, and the problem with Jackknight stuff is obviously Jackknight doesn't exist anymore, so if you break it you are pretty much buggered. So there's only, in the entire time I was looking, and it's probably been nearly, it could be getting on for 6 months, I've been contemplating changing the gearbox. I've only seen one 5-speed come up for sale, a remote change 5-speed Jackknight box, and it was in Sweden or somewhere. It wasn't badly priced, but again it was just the Jackknight issue. So I decided to go for the mini spares rod change one. Now the only problem with the rod change one is obviously the cost. I looked on Minispare's website at the various options to do. I did contemplate briefly a straight cut one, but the gearbox that was in Austin before, the Magic Wand one, is helical with straight cut drops, and it's the straight cut drops that make all the noise. People think it's the straight cut gearbox. It isn't. The drop gears make the most noise of anything. Driving Austin with its helical box and straight cut drops, you wouldn't notice any difference in noise to one with a fully straight cut box. So I decided to go helical again. Christopher was trying to persuade me to go for helical drops as well, but I decided that I would stick with the straight cut ones I had, which was my first mistake. I discounted changing to the roller drop style, although I have a set on the shelf, although I'm not sure what make they are, because I didn't want the hassle of having to hammer the bearings or the bearing carriers into the flywheel end housing and into gearbox as well, because I struggled last time. As you remember from an early video, I struggled when I was doing Bumblebees and couldn't do it myself, so I didn't want to have that complication. But I didn't bear in mind the differences between the A Plus gearbox that the mini spares one 5-speed conversions come in, and the Magic Wand A series gearbox that I had originally. I was too fixated on the fact it had A Plus gears in it, and not the fact it was A Plus gears but in an A series box. So this is Austin's engine, obviously as per normal. You can see there, Arden 8-pot head. It's the road version from the mid-90s, so it's got the smaller valves in it. I think it's got the standard style rockers as well, because at the time you didn't need the modern ones that have the different rocker posts in. It's 1380 with S crank, EN40B crank, 1275 GT or 1300 GT or something block, and because it's a S crank and not an S block, you have to thin down the thrust washers to get them to fit. Standard thrust washers need thinning down by about 6 thou each to get the correct end float, which I've got at about 3 thou. So I've got 2.5 done, which is it's a real pain in the ass of a job. So before, I've just got one more fully to do, and then that centre main bearing can go back on, and then the gearbox can go on. I've just this afternoon finished working on this end. New triangle plate, obviously new plate back on with new gaskets, new triangle plate in the back of there, and I've checked the end floor. It's a little bit on the high side. It's about 5 thou. Allowance is 3 to 7, so it's at the top end, but I've tried it with different triangle plates and that I've got, and it's too low, so it's too tight otherwise. And I've checked the alignment here between the two cogs, put a straight edge across, and that's absolutely bang on. I had to take some shims out of the back of there, so that's fine now. It's got a new water pump on it as standard, new oil pump this end. It's just an S, well, not an S, but it's a Spider Drive oil pump, because it's a 286 cam. And then over here you can see all the engine parts that I've been stripping off and painting, and new seals. You can see there on the flywheel end casing there, I've got the billet type clutch arm assembly. I've also got a complete new clutch system, so it's got a new slave, which you can see there painted, and a new master as well. So everything's going to be new, because the clutch was really bad before. It didn't look really worn, but it was maybe just a combination of all the parts adding up. So this is the main reason for it coming apart. Mini spares, 5-speed gearbox. It's a helical one. Obviously the end casings had new bearings all the way through it. Still got to put the primary gear auto seal in, which is just lying there. I'm using one of these mini spares gold plugs. They've got a really massively strong magnet. It doesn't protrude through into the gearbox as far as the other ones, but it's really strong. That's to go on, and then in there I've got an MED pulley, crank pulley, with the tooth built into it, because the old one, which you can see under there, is a knackered old thing, and it was never balanced, whereas the MED ones come pre-balanced. The pile of stuff there is just the clutch parts. It's had a clutch very recently, so it's just going to go straight back in. There's hardly any wear on it at all, as you would expect, the amount of miles it's done. And that's the gearbox that came out, which is a Magic 1 style with, well, it's a Guessworks hybrid one they call it. It's Magic 1 style, but with an A+ gear set in it. So that'll be for sale when I get this one built and put in. So that's all the parts just waiting to go in. I've just got to get this bleeding thrust washer sorted, which is absolute pain in the arse of a job, and then we can put the gearbox on down there and start to look at putting it back in the car. Right, so finally I've finished doing those thrust washers. I've had to file them down from, I think the value was 93 down to 84.5 thou. Filing by hand using a file, some glass and some sandpaper, and it's taken forever, but finally it's done. As you can see, I've got the main caps back on, and I put a little reference mark, and I normally do that with Tipp-Ex just to show that I've got all the main bolts tightened. Obviously the new thrust washers are in there for anybody that doesn't know. Next job is to put on fresh big end nuts. The ones well, these are the original ones. You can see that, like a nylock style nut, and they say that you shouldn't, well, obviously you shouldn't reuse them, but the nylock part of it in the centre there can get hot, soften, and allow it to come loose during hard use, I suppose. I think I've reused these once, but I had loads of thread lock on them, so I'm not going to use them again. So what I've got are these ones. You can see that, it'll focus. No, maybe not. But they're a multi-point design with a flanged bottom, and that gives it a better seal, a better contact onto the big end just there. so I'll whack them on next. Okay, so the next job is to put the gearbox on the block, but before that I thought I'd show you the difference between the 5-speed box and the Magic Wand hybrid box, and show you the problems that I came across when I was doing the conversion. So in front of us here we've got two gearboxes. On the right hand side, this one is the Magic Wand Guessworks hybrid one with the A-series gears in it in the old style gearbox. And then bollocks the way. And then the other one we have is the Mini Spares 5-speed, fully A+. This one has a twin pin diff, 3.4 final drive, and as you can see here, I've put on the straight cut drop gears. This one transfers straight across from this gearbox, but this one, the idler gear, doesn't, and I forgot that because I was, as I said, I was fixated on the fact that it was A+, but I forgot totally that the gearbox casing was A series. Now the difference between the two is on the size of this shaft. See the size there? Let's see if I can hold it up somewhere. There's the difference. You can see the A-series one is much thicker. Now, so that meant I went and picked the gearbox up along with all the other bits that I thought I would need for the build, but when I got home I realised obviously I had a mixed match, so I had to buy an A+ idler gear. I think they're 32 for something like that. They're always the same, the idler gears, and I also had to buy the shims as well, because obviously these shims are a lot smaller internal diameter hole than these ones, and I probably had some of these knocking about somewhere but I could not find them, so I ended up buying the Mini Spares kit of, I think it's 5 shims. They're oversized ones. It's like supposed to be 2 standard ones and then a selection of the oversized ones in the kit, which are donated by the colour. You see the yellow dot. It was supposed to be 2 standard ones, and a yellow one and a blue one and a red one and a green one or something like that. But the kit came with 2 yellow ones, 1 standard one, and then the other colours. I was able to put the flywheel end casing on, and by substituting various shims in and out, I think the combination I ended up with was 1 yellow one and 1 red one, I think. Check for the colours. Nah, it's the combination I ended up with was 1 yellow one and 1 standard shim on the other side, and that gave me the correct end float on the idle gear. I can't remember what it was, but it was bang on. So that's the difference between the two gearboxes. The only other mod I've had to do on this one is to drill out the holes to match, because on the gearbox, on the engine I've got, they've been drilled out to the bigger size, 5/16 or whatever it is. So that was the change. And then I've also fitted the correct speedo drive gear in the far end to match the speedo that's in Austin at the moment. I got those from Guessworks.